Dan Bongino, a former deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation during the administration of Donald Trump, resigned from his post several months ago and has since returned to podcasting. While his tenure at the FBI drew limited public attention at the time, recent commentary has renewed focus on his role during internal deliberations related to investigative files connected to Jeffrey Epstein. In a recent podcast episode, Bongino discussed what he said he knew, what he did not know, and his personal views regarding the handling of those materials. His remarks have generated debate online, with some commentators expressing criticism. Separately, political analyst Ro Khanna has commented on newly released documents, suggesting that public officials, including Trump and Pam Bondi, are seeking to influence public interpretation of the records. Those officials have not publicly characterized their actions in those terms. The situation continues to evolve as additional documents are reviewed and reactions from political figures and commentators develop.
Carson Carney, you have now been officially informed that you have 100% of the Epstein files.
Well, that's just wrong. And it's not just Thomas Massie and I who are now calling it out, not just Marjorie Taylor Greene who's calling it out. People like Tim Burchett, people like Nancy Mace are saying this is just not transparent. Even Senator Kennedy is saying this is not transparent. And the reality is they're muddying the water. I mean, instead of focusing on people like Lutnick, people like the ambassador in Turkey, people like the Stephen Bannon, who had actual correspondence or relationships with Epstein, they're just putting out every public figure. And not only is that letting off people who actually may have been involved in illegal or immoral behavior, but it's also breeding such cynicism because, as your monologue showed, there are people like President Obama who didn't get anywhere close to this, who are decent, who are moral, who believe in the rule of law and America's character. And for them to try to conflate everyone is a terrible disservice to democracy.
What are your next steps?
Well, we're contemplating several things. Nancy Mace has actually offered an idea of whether we have to have another legislative approach in Congress to clarify further the law. And remember, Lawrence, the first bill passed 427-1 and 100-0 in the Senate. So there are veto-proof majorities that we could have. There are survivors who could bring a case before Judge Engelmeyer and Judge Berman in the Southern District of New York. Thomas Massie or I may bring that case. We, as you recall, asked for a special master for this purpose. Now, Judge Engelmeyer ruled that we needed to actually bring a motion, an actual case, and we're contemplating that.
The Epstein files, unless they're destroyed by this administration, and Donald Trump gives pardons to the people who destroy them, will be there when a Democrat wins the White House next time, presumably in the next presidential election, and a new attorney general. What do you anticipate they might be doing in the Justice Department in anticipation of someday having to hand over to a Democratic attorney general the Epstein files?
I believe they're trying to cover up as much as they can of people close to the president or in his network. I mean, we know that the FBI already scrubbed these files with redactions, and we don't know where the existing files are.
In recent commentary, an independent media host argued that news coverage surrounding investigative materials related to Jeffrey Epstein reflects what the host described as an effort to minimize or reframe aspects of the story. The commentator pointed to segments on Fox News in which some hosts discussed Epstein in a lighter tone and suggested that certain media figures have emphasized terms such as alleged when referring to victims, documents, or potential associations involving public figures, including Donald Trump. The host contrasted this language with rhetoric used in past political controversies, arguing that standards of description appear to vary depending on context. The remarks also referenced a recent podcast segment by Dan Bongino, in which he discussed his understanding of matters related to the Epstein case. According to the commentator, portions of Bongino's statements prompted significant reaction online. Responses to those comments continue to circulate, and the broader debate over media framing and public interpretation of the Epstein-related records remains ongoing.
Now,
You saw a massive dump of what's known as the Epstein case file this weekend. This is almost unprecedented in American history, letting this information out there. There's going to be a lot of strong opinions on it. Good. That is the best part of living in a constitutional republic, that this stuff is not hidden. There's a lot of curiosity about this case over time, me included, for obvious reasons. It involves a disturbing set of circumstances, a lot of very wealthy people who interacted with them. There is a process because innocent people are entitled to a trial until they are proven guilty. However, given the interest in the case, I think on net, positives and negatives, it is a net positive that you're able to look at this and see this so we can you can see what happened behind the scenes. Now, do you understand, though, however, given the Epstein Files Transparency Act, why this thing and the writing of it was done so poorly? Here's a New York Post article about what happened. California lawmakers' Epstein bombshell outs 4 random guys with no connection to sick billionaire pedophile. That's why there was a back and forth. I feel like I owe you context on this, having lived through this thing and having dedicated hundreds, upwards of close to 1,000 people between FBI and DOJ into getting the information out there and fighting for that. It was like a big public spectacle. I mean, everybody remembers. But now do the emails make sense? You can see the emails yourself. People are forwarding me emails on what this redaction process looks like. This is why.